You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
Hey everyone, it is Monday, and you know what that means. It is McGuire Mondays here, Toronto Sports Rush. I'm Julie Stewart-Binks, joined by Pierre McGuire, and we are talking all things Toronto Maple Leafs. And Pierre, the last time we spoke, on Monday of course, you said this stretch coming up was an important time that the Leafs could really take advantage. They faced the Devils. They won in overtime, which was absolutely not possible, but they did it. They beat the Ducks. They lost to Detroit, and then they beat the Sabres. Just as like an overall thesis statement, thought on how the Leafs have done this last week, what would you say?
I would say they did well in terms of accumulating points. I think probably their last 40 minutes in their game against Buffalo was probably their best that they played. Anthony Stolarz was so good in that game in New Jersey. Julie, we have to be transparent. You and I were texting back and forth, and we're like, holy moly, he's putting on a show and a half, and he really did.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate he got injured, obviously, in the Anaheim game, but the truth of the matter is the Leafs are starting to get their people back. And we saw that the last 40 minutes of the Buffalo Sabre game. And one of the things that I'm taking out of that, Julie, when you ask me about how they're doing, I'll tell you what's going to be really impressive. Matthew Nyes, this is their left side right now, Julie. Matthew Nyes, 6'3", 227. Max Pacioretty, 6'2", 206. Bobby McMann, 6'2", 209. Stevie Lorentz, 6'4", 205. They are now, without a doubt, the biggest left wing team in the National Hockey League. They're going to pulverize the other team's right defenseman. They're going to become a very dangerous team on the forecheck because all those players can skate, and they're all big. This is the Leafs are going in the right direction. I said to you at the beginning of our shows, this is the best Leafs team I've seen since the lockout, since the Pat Quinn era.
Wow.
And I'm gonna stick in that. I'm gonna stick with that.
So lockout of 2006.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, like which lockout are we looking at this point? No, I think you've got some great points there, and there's so many various different things that you kind of touched on. Let's look at the game that happened against Buffalo and seeing Max Domi score his first goal of the season, which I thought was, I was almost surprised to think that was his first goal. But, you saw the look of sort of like, that stress, that relief when he scored. That line too, with him, Nick Robertson, and Bobby McMann as a third line. What did you see maybe about the way they play together that you think could have longevity?
Well, the forecheck ability and the size and the skating of Bobby McMann. Now, this is a player that I've known since he was a kid growing up in Wainwright, Alberta, and playing at Colgate University as an undrafted player. Max Domi plays a great give-and-go game with Robertson. I think that's an important part of it. You can see they're comfortable moving puck back and forth. McMann can be the defensive conscience of that line, too, because he can back check so well. I think that line has a chance to be really formidable and really strong. And if you're going to win, let's just use the Florida Panther model. You need to have 3 and probably 4 lines that can manufacture offense, can forecheck with a vengeance, and create offense with skill. And I think the Leafs now have that with that third line.
Yeah, and with Robertson, he'd been scratched 4 games before this, and I think a lot of people were wondering what his future might be. He sets up Domi. He also scores a goal for himself. Maybe in what way do you think he has elevated his game to the point where he could be a mainstay and get more minutes?
When you're a player like that, you can't lose your identity. So his identity has to be as a point producer, as a guy that doesn't turn the puck over, plays smart with the puck on his stick, makes give-and-go plays with Domi, can set up Bobby McMann, can take the setups and finish plays off. If he plays to his identity, he'll be fine. Once he deviates from his identity, from being an offensive player, then it's going to be a problem. But right now, you have to be really excited about the way he played, especially in the last 40 minutes against Buffalo.
Right. And that bottom 6 has been sort of difficult for the Leafs to be able to get offense from. Yeah. Is this just sort of like one game, or do you, we spoke very positively about this one line, but just in terms of the personnel that they have in that bottom 6, do you think they have enough to be able to have that depth scoring?
So let's remember now, they're probably at some point going to get David Kampf back. At some point, they're probably going to get Calle Jarnkrok back. At some point, maybe Holmberg goes back into the lineup. Maybe Fraser Minton goes back in the lineup as a depth player. I think they can. I think they're going to have more than enough of balanced attack, Julie, with their third and fourth lines, which is really positive. But to me, the one thing that stands out about the Leafs, and Johnny Tavares had his 14th career hat
Oh,
trick yesterday. He has 2 hat tricks this season. And, you could see the comfort he has playing with Nylander and Pacioretty right now. Johnny's just gone to a whole other level. And I know the cynics out there, Julie, are going to say, hey, you know what? He's in a contract year. He's going to push. I've known John Tavares since he's been 14 years old. He never cheats the game. He's never cheated the game. That guy cares so much about winning and leading and being part of a real positive environment. I'm so happy for him, and I'm thrilled that Leaf fans get to see him play at this level right now.
right. I mean, it's amazing. We hadn't even touched on that until this point because there've been so many interesting things that happened this week. But John Tavares feels as though he's playing with a new sense of life. Like he doesn't have the captaincy anymore. You mentioned contract year, but I think in the sense that this guy he's finding a way to take his game to a different level. Maybe that is I don't know if you're watching it. Is he playing differently? Like what is it maybe that's working for him on the ice?
I think he's starting to shoot the puck more. He's moving his feet, and when he's moving his feet, he's shooting the puck more. He used to be more of a pass first guy and a shooter second. But the one thing, and I love this one quote he had, and I'm remiss on who reported the quote, but he basically said that ever since I was a young player, he was always able to score. He's right. He was. That's why, he had exceptional status. That's why he played, World Junior as a young guy. That's why he played in this Summit Series with the World Juniors back in 2007. He was just such a talented offensive point producer. But the fact that he's moving his feet more and shooting the puck more, he's become a lethal weapon, not just as a playmaker, but as a pure scorer, which is really important to insulate, Marner and Matthews and Nyes in particular.
Right. And I think that when you mentioned some of those big guns up there that everyone focuses on, maybe in a way he's kind of like flying under the radar because he is part of the quote unquote core four, but with everything that's gone on with the team and changes, I think a lot of people have sort of put him in the back of their mind, and maybe teams just aren't necessarily even taking him as seriously maybe as they had in the past. But I was texting with a friend who's close with the team who said, oh, Team Canada should be disappointed that they didn't bring him in for the Four Nations face-off. What do you make of something like that?
Yeah, I always thought he was a player that had a chance. There are a couple that I'm surprised at. I'm surprised that Johnny T wasn't on the team. I'm surprised that Scheifele out in Winnipeg's not on the team. I'm a little surprised that Adam Lowry didn't get more attention for that team, just big physical presence. And the last one is Tommy Wilson. I thought those 4 players in particular, and I'm sure they probably merited serious consideration. It's a real good team. The one thing I'd say is, some people are doubting some of the players that were selected. I'm watching, Anthony Cirelli all these years. He's exactly what John Cooper needs. He's exactly what John Cooper knows he has to have. So, people are pointing fingers. I would never point a finger on any player that's on that team. I have too much respect for the process. But I also know there's some guys that merited major consideration, and Johnny Tavares is one of them.
Right. And to your point about Cirelli, I mean, maybe just a lot of people haven't watched Tampa games unless when they were in the final or anything like that. So you kind of see guys go overlooked. You only think of the Braden points or when Stamkos was there or, Kucherov, all that kind of stuff. But there were so many great guys like Cirelli. I remember watching him as well there. So when we look at, you mentioned, so we're talking a lot of positives about the Leafs because there is a lot to be happy about. However, like the games that they won, like they weren't necessarily pretty.
Nope.
The Devils won. They absolutely should not have won that game. Like that's a game the Leafs would always lose. Like they would always be on the losing side no matter what. They wouldn't get the puck luck in their way. It feels as though they're almost like all the dues they paid over the years, like they're finally cashing in on some of that going their own way. Would you think maybe that they've kind of they've gotten more points than they maybe have deserved to get?
Maybe, but here's one thing I do know. Usually over the course of an 82-game schedule, the coach has to make a difference at least 10 times over those 82 games when the team's down and out and they don't have it going on. So that's 20 points in the standings, positive or negative. In this case, I think the coach, Craig Berube, and his staff have made a difference, especially this past week. because I think some of the guys let their guard down. I think that
Right.
team spent some time in New York before their game with the New Jersey Devils. I don't think,
Yes, I think I can confirm. I have heard that they may or may not have had a rookie party in New York.
but I'm just
Not that
saying that.
I wasn't there. I'm not saying I was at it, but
But I'm
I'm
just
not
saying
cool enough to know that.
I think they let their guard down a little bit this week. That's why I said it was an important week for them. And I think Craig pushed the right buttons, especially going into that game yesterday with Buffalo. He got their attention coming out of the Detroit game, and they came to play the last 40 minutes. I would say that. So the coaching staff's made that difference. Now, I still think there are more games they will make a difference. But if you were to ask me what's the biggest difference, there's an agenda with this team that's really positive because the coach has their attention. And I think that really matters a lot.
Okay, so you said a coach influences a game, 10 games?
10 over 82 where he's got to be the guy. Star players run this season, but if there's 10 times over the course of 82 games where the coach makes the right decisions, that's 20 points in the standings. That's significant.
Where does that come from? Like, I've never heard that before.
Because I watch a lot of games and I evaluate what really good coaches do and I study it. And I think it's a really valuable component. I worked with the winningest coach of all time, Scotty Bowman, and I was his assistant. And it was amazing to watch him work and to study from him. And he made decisions that influence. I'll give you one decision, okay? We played in Washington, D.C., and this is back in the 91-92 season. And we were stinky on a Friday night. Like, we were bad. And we lost the game. So this is a kind of decision I'm talking about. Scotty's parents lived in Verdun, Quebec. We took a commercial flight from BWI, Baltimore Airport, to Montreal. We got off in Montreal. We got on the bus, and I heard Scotty say to the bus driver, take me to Verdun, Quebec. And the bus driver goes, no, I'm supposed to take you to Quebec City. He goes, you're taking me to Verdun, and then the bus goes to Quebec City. So he just got off the bus. He didn't say a word to anybody, Julie. We get to Quebec City. We check in at the Chateau Frontenac. There are no cell phones in those days. And I see the guys complaining. And I'm going, uh-oh, something's going on here. It's a beautiful property, great hotel. And the front office lady says, is there a Mr. McGuire here? And I go, yeah, me, I'm here. She goes, there's a telephone call for you. So I go take the phone. It's Scotty. He goes, how's it going? I go, what do you mean? He goes, are the guys whining and complaining and really upset? I go, actually, they are. How would you know that? He goes, because they changed all the roommates. We got to get their attention. Back then, guys had to have roommates. The only guys that didn't have it were goalies. They slept on their own. So he switched all the roommates to make the guys uncomfortable because he didn't want them to lay an egg like we did Friday night for our Sunday game in Quebec City. And I think we ended up winning the game 8-2 or 8-1.
Wow.
But that's what I'm talking about. Little things like that where the coach has to make a difference 10 times over the course of a season.
Wow, how fascinating. I never even would have thought or heard of something like that. But it's luckily it worked out in your favor at that point. Especially when you're coming into a game like that. Sometimes it can obviously go the other way. As you said, like the coach can influence it both good and bad. But
Correct.
Okay, so you mentioned Washington. So Max Pacioretty last year had 4 goals in 47 games for Washington. He's had 4 goals so far this season. He looks like a different player, almost like a bit of like a John Tavares in a different way. But what is it about his maybe role or what he's doing with the Leafs that is benefiting his game and also benefiting the team?
Well, he's starting to get more physical. We saw it on Monday night when you saw that hit with Jack Hughes, obviously, and a lot of people in New Jersey didn't like it, but I thought it was a clean hit. I did. I thought it was a clean hit. I thought it was a good, hard physical play. So Max is dictating a little bit more offensively. I think he's taken the coaching message to heart from Craig Berube. I think he knows this is his best last chance to win the Stanley Cup, and he's going to do everything he can to be a positive player. I've seen this with older players, too, near the end of their careers where they get really urgent. They're positive people around the dressing room. They're positive people on the ice, and they respect the item that the coach has provided for them. So in this case, I'm sure Berube said, you got to skate, you got to be strong with your board play, and you got to initiate on the forecheck. And if you do those 3 things, you're never coming out of the lineup. But if you don't do them, you're probably going to watch from the stands. Now, maybe Craig says it a little nicer than I do, or maybe says it a little bit more meanly than I did. But the truth is that older players, when they know the end is near, they're usually a pretty captive audience.
Right. Do you think that he's performed better than what the Leafs expected from when getting him?
I think they did. I think he has. I think that's why he's playing in the top six role right now. I do. I think he has. And again, I'm going to go down to the size of that left wing. Nyes, Pacioretty, McMann, Lawrence, those are huge people. That makes it really hard for the opposition because they can all skate, they can all grind, they can all make skillful plays, and they can wear on you physically. This is a huge asset for the Leafs that is not getting nearly enough attention. Not nearly enough.
Right. Okay. Let's get one more positive in there before I'm going to hit on some other things. But Auston Matthews felt like last game against Buffalo. I mean, that the incredible shot he had that Tavares tipped in. I believe that was that on the power play, the first goal?
Yeah, it was Johnny JT was posted up. Yeah, it was a goal.
Yeah. It
right
feels as though, I mean, Austin also had the game winner in overtime against
Jersey,
the Devils.
Jersey, yeah.
Would you say, like, have you noticed maybe anything different with him coming back?
Oh, he's shooting the puck. He's definitely shooting the puck. He wants he's demanding the puck. And I love the fact that they use he and Marner to start most penalty kills. I think it makes a massive difference. He's so undervalued defensively. You know, I remember when he was playing in the U.S. National Team Development Program, Donnie Granado was running the program then, and he called me up. I had a Detroit Red Wing Chicago Blackhawk game, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, when are you getting to Detroit for the game?" I said, "I'm getting there tomorrow." He said, "Would you come in and meet the team and break down some tape with me?" So I did. And at the end of it, he said, "What do you think of the Matthews kid?" And I go, "He's Ronnie Francis, who I had the privilege of coaching, but with a lot more speed because he can play both sides of the puck like Ronnie did, and he can make plays like Ronnie did, but he's a better skater than Ronnie." And he goes, "Wow, that's a pretty high compliment." I said, "No, that's how I see it." And Austin's never disappointed me from that. He's been such an undervalued defensive asset, and the fact that Craig Berube appreciates that now is huge for the Leafs. So I think Austin's playing great because he demands the puck and he's moving his feet.
Right, and I'm sure he's hungry to get some more goals after being out for quite a few games earlier this year. Okay. 6 out of the last 7 games, they have allowed the first goal. What is it with this Leafs team and being able to not start strong?
I don't know. It's a good question. If I was around more, especially around the dressing room, maybe you get to know a little bit more about it. Every team is different. You know, some teams come right out of the gate and they're ready to go. Other teams just not as much. So I think it comes down to what the leaders are saying in the room and how the guys prepare themselves. And if it's not working for them, they probably have to look in the mirror and say, okay, what do we have to do to fix this? I think that's one of the biggest things. Some of the teams that I was fortunate enough to be around, the leaders really made a difference when it came to preparing before the game. They really did.
Okay, and so within saying that, against Buffalo, Dennis Hildeby gets a start, and he allows 2 goals. Obviously, one of them, they were on a penalty kill to start the game.
Yeah.
What do you make of the goaltending situation right now, and what do you think the Leafs should be doing?
Nothing really different. I like the fact that they had enough trust and faith in Hildeby to put him in against Buffalo. I think Joe Woll is going to be a very good goalie for them. Clearly, Anthony Stolarz was a steal of the summer. I mean, you look around the league, there's a lot of teams that have this organizational need for goaltending, elite goaltending, and Anthony Stolarz has been an elite goalie. So hats off to the scouting staff and to what they've done in terms of internal development. It's been phenomenal to watch. But to me, the biggest thing is that they're deep in goal now, and they trust all 3 goalies. I don't think they really have to change very much.
Would you be, but with Stolarz being on IR for lower body with, we saw he got injured sort of, like it was very confusing against the Ducks. It looked like he might have just had like a weird movement. Maybe how concerned are you about him going on the IR? And then in the meantime, like having Woll start and then Hildeby back up. Like, is that good enough during this time?
I think it is during this time. The fact that they're going into Dallas and they're coming back playing in Buffalo, and then they have the Islanders. I mean, 2 of those 3 teams, one of those 3 teams is a real good team, and the other 2 are not as good. So I'm not that concerned. And then you got the Christmas break, which will be good. I can't imagine Stolarz is pretty lengthy because he hasn't gone on LTIR. So it's just a matter of when he comes back, when they're comfortable to bring him back. But the one thing that I think Toronto's also a little bit different, Berube's presented this defensive mechanism through the neutral zone for them where they're a lot better. They defend a lot harder. They make it harder for people to get odd man rushes against. And now that McCabe is back, the signing of Tanev, the signing of Ekman-Larsson, they're in a pretty good position with their defense and the way their team is structured right now. It's an easier game for their goalies to play, except for Monday night in New Jersey, which I think we would all agree was not a very good night.
I'm sure Stolarz in the room afterwards was just like, you guys owe me big time.
I would agree.
Especially because he's back in like his home, area, like his home state, I guess. He's from New Jersey, right?
Yeah,
I know he's
born in Edison, New Jersey. That's right.
There we go. I knew the guy would know where you would be the one who'd know where he was born. I know he's a Mets fan, so that's. I was curious about what area he was born in. So that, I mean, he obviously probably was as part of like a new team, maybe partook in some of the rookie festivities, unconfirmed, confirmed sort of situation. Just was reading right now, Pierre, that. The Leafs are potentially going to be looking for a second line center. The Brad Treliving has mentioned that to the fourth period. What do you think about that, and who do you think that could be?
Oh, there are a lot of different names. It's hard to speculate on that. If they are looking for a second center, that means they're going to move Johnny Tavares to the third and the 3-hole, and then Domi goes probably to the wing. Because I can't see Max Domi playing as a fourth-line player for Toronto, and then it moves to the wing, and that becomes very interesting. I think when you start to talk about that, you probably look at teams that are probably not playoff teams. So, in the West, you can probably look at a team like Nashville. Do they move Ryan O'Reilly? I'm not saying they would, but
have him back.
Yeah, I don't know.
The return.
I don't know how that plays out, but if you're asking, like, would he be a good number 2 center? The answer is yeah, he would. He'd be an elite number 2 center. So I'd be looking at non-playoff teams from the West, and I'd be looking at non-playoff teams in the East right now. And there are probably a few of them in a bunch of different places. But if you were to ask me one name, it would be Ryan O'Reilly.
That's pretty good because, I mean, I just put you on the spot there with that, and that's an incredible answer for a situation that we're not, entirely sure. I mean, of course, the fourth period reported that Brad Treliving did say that. Now, I got to just give I need to get this out of my system, but seeing Dan and EJ talk about the fact that Jacob Trouba, what his future could be with the Leafs, I almost like deleted the episode off of my phone. I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. When you hear people say things like that, these are our coworkers, so, love all around. But a Jacob Trouba Leafs, that just feels like it doesn't compute whatsoever.
No, I have a hard time with that. I did hear those rumors, though. I didn't hear from Dan and EJ, but I did hear those rumors. So I called an agent friend of mine who's pretty plugged into the Anaheim situation, and I said, what happens with Trouba? Do they keep him or do they move him? And he says, I have to think, and he's pretty plugged in Anaheim, that they made a situational deal where they told the player, we're not trading you this year. We're going to let you get your life in order. You're not going to be a suitcase. So I don't know how that plays out. Sometimes the NHL is a real hard place, and they go back on their word and they say, well, we weren't going to trade you, but now we are. I think for them to have facilitated this deal, and especially now after they traded Cam Fowler out of Anaheim, I'd be surprised if they were going to trade him. I would be very surprised if Jacob Trouba got traded. I really would.
Were you surprised to see the Fowler deal happen this soon? I felt like I knew something was going to happen with him, but I didn't realize it would happen now.
I think St. Louis needed it to happen because of Nick Leddy's injury. And so I think that's why they try to make it happen quicker. There is a relationship there with Doug Armstrong and Pat Verbeek. So I think that's an important part of helping make those kinds of deals. I watched their game with the Rangers yesterday. I thought Cam played a real good game for them, especially when you consider, that's a lot of movement for him. The team was on the road when he got traded, so that's not an easy thing either. But I would say no. I mean, the truth is that I think St. Louis sees themselves as a potential playoff team, especially with their young forwards like Kyrou and Robert Thomas in particular. So they're a little light on the back end. When you don't have Krug and you don't have Leddy, that makes your defense a little bit light. So they needed a D-man They didn't trade very much to get him, though, which was surprising.
I like seeing Cam get an opportunity with a different team, having covered him with the Anaheim Ducks like 100 years ago. And he's been there this entire time. And ever since then, like they were so good kind of back in the 2016, 2017, 2015 era when I was there. And then they've just been real bad ever since pretty much. And it's like when you're kind of over there in Anaheim, especially in Southern California, where there's a lot of sports teams, but also people don't care as much about sports because there's entertainment and so many other things going on and everyone's really vapid in LA. So it's nice to see like him get an opportunity to be seen as a player. Like
it's a fair point. It's a really good point. One of the heartbreaking things for me, I'm a huge Ryan Getzlaf fan. You know, I watched Ryan play junior in Calgary. I watched him obviously the World Juniors, watched him in the Olympics, watched him win the Stanley Cup in 2007. He played the game right. Like, he never cheated the game. He's a really good player in a marketplace that's not overly large, as you correctly say. So these kinds of guys kind of got lost. Guys like Teemu Selanne, Corey Perry, Ryan Getzlaf, they kind of got lost in the whole thing. People forget Scotty Niedermayer, Chris Pronger, Francois Beauchemin, Sean O'Donnell. They were all part of a Ducks team winning the Stanley Cup in 2007. Half the league didn't even know those guys were playing.
I know.
You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is wild. I think that's a great point about Ryan Getzlaf. Pierre, thank you so much for everything, Leafs and beyond. This has been McGuire Mondays, and we will see everyone again next Monday.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.